Hello, everyone. Good evening and Jai Hind. Today it's my proud privilege and honor to have someone who we all revere, someone who needs no introduction at all. You all know him, you all watch him very often on television with his expert views and comments. And someone I had the privilege of meeting a few years earlier at the Aligarh Muslim University, and I had the proud privilege of meeting once again. Uh, you can't hear me, Rajdeep?
I can hear you.
Okay, all okay. I'll finish the introduction. All right, fine. And but it's not an introduction. It's just and I have the proud privilege of having Rajdeep's book with me, a personal signed copy, and that's wow. Okay, now cutting a long story short, because Rajdeep was doing this, so I thought I'd probably saying, "So ucha bolo thoda," but no. Cutting a long story short, we all know that he is the son of the illustrious, renowned cricketer, Mr. Dilip Sardesai, who has won many laurels for the country. His mother is a very popular social activist in Mumbai who was the head of Department of Sociology at the St. Xavier's College. Radeep, I would like to ask you, you come from a very illustrious background. And we know that for the fact that you played 6 rounds of cricket while you were at the Oxford University, and in fact, you did a combined match with the 1987 visiting Pakistan team of the Cambridge and Oxford as well. But didn't you ever think of actually getting into cricket professionally like your father?
First of all, Ali, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure being here on the show. I know we've been trying to do this over a long period of time, so my apologies for that, but great to be with you. Look, let me be very honest. Cricket was something that I dreamt about as a kid. It was something I was almost obsessed with. I loved the game. But it's one thing to love the game. It's another thing to play it at a high level, particularly in a country like India where, a billion people and only 11 people can play for India. You have to have the talent. And talent doesn't necessarily run in the blood. As I realized, my father came from a small town of Madgaon in Goa. Till today, he remains the only Goa-born cricketer to play for India. He was taught by the village tailor, and he had no formal coaching till he was 17, 18 and came to Mumbai. I had all the facilities, best bats, best kits, best coaches, but I didn't have one critical quality or two critical qualities. One is talent, the other is fire in the belly. I didn't have both. So while I played up to a certain level, I wasn't good enough. I believe that at the end of the day, sports is something that you have to have the skill, the temperament, which is built over a period of time, and of course the God-given talent. I didn't have it. I played in a team with Sachin Tendulkar's brother, Ali, and Sachin's brother and I, were decent cricketers. But along comes one day a 9-year-old to one of our practice matches, and he hits the ball harder than us. Sachin Tendulkar was 9, we were I think 15, 16, and he was hitting the ball harder than we were. Now, wo Bhagwan ki den hoti hai. And so I think some people have sports, have the skill and talent to play sports at the highest level. There are those like us who are couch potatoes, enjoy commenting on sport. We play a bit, but not good enough. So, I would have loved to have played and, followed my father's footsteps. But I think beyond playing a little bit of first-class cricket, I wasn't good enough to make the next grade. And I'll tell you where I realized that. You mentioned this game against Pakistan. I played against that Pakistan team, which included Abdul Qadir. And I was bowled for 1 or 2. And I think I must have touched only 1 or 2 balls out of the 8 balls that Qadir bowled at me. And I was finally bowled. And as I was leaving, Salim Malik was the Pakistan cricketer, looks at me and says, "Are yaar, tu India se aata and you can't play spin bowling?" And I realized then and there that, I needed to do other things with my life. I wasn't good enough.
You are being very modest. Otherwise, had you
No,
not
no.
been good enough, you wouldn't have played for the Oxford and Cambridge combined and 6 times for the Oxford anyway. Now,
No, I think that reflects more on the quality of cricket at Oxford than on my abilities or lack of them.
I love your sense of humor. So tell you one thing, you have studied economics, you studied law, and you've had the best of education. In fact, you went to convent schools, you went to St. Xavier's, you went to the University College in Oxford. So tell me one thing, you didn't really study mass communication or journalism formally. if I'm not mistaken. So what
That's
was it
right.
that you decided to take up journalism as a career? What prompted you, and what was the triggering factor in your life, Rajdeep?
Ali, from a young age, I was obsessed with current affairs. Uh, I was obsessed with general knowledge, current affairs. You could ask me the capital of any country in the world at the age of 10, and I would tell you. You could ask me what were the newspaper headlines at the age of 10, 12, and I could tell you. I remember when Indira Gandhi lost that famous election of 1977, running around my house saying, Indira Gandhi has lost, Indira Gandhi has lost. And so I had an obsession for news as well, much as I had this passion for cricket. And I think I was in college in my second year in 1984 or 85. A newspaper had come out in Mumbai called the Afternoon, or Bombay Afternoon Dispatch and Courier, brought out by this wonderful man called Behram Contractor, better known as Busy
Right.
Bee. And I spent the summer interning in the Afternoon Dispatch and Courier. And I just loved being surrounded by the crispy, holding a freshly baked newspaper, if I may call it, in my hand, looking at the headlines, occasionally getting a byline in the newspaper, and just the entire atmosphere of a newsroom excited me. So I think that 1985 summer internship changed my life in many ways. And I think when I came back from Oxford, I could have pursued my career with law. I probably have made a lot more money given what lawyers earn today. But I think somewhere I wanted to experiment, or at least try to see if I could take forward my sort of affection, love for a newsroom. And, that's how I joined the Times of India in 1988. Now, so many years later, no regrets really. But yeah, there's a bit of a lawyer in me. That's why I like to argue sometimes, even with my own guests. That's the kind of person I am. I like a good debate.
They say education never goes waste. I mean, I know a lot of people personally who've done engineering, but they enter into the creative industry, they've entered the film industry. But again, I would say the education didn't go waste. So your education in economics, in law, I mean, as you said, you would like to debate, or since you have knowledge of that. Now, having said that, Rajdeep, your wife Sagarika also studied at Oxford. So did you meet her while you were at Oxford, or that's a different story altogether?
No, that's an interesting story. We met at the Rhodes Scholarship interviews to go to Oxford. The interviews were in Jamshedpur because Rusi Modi, the then chairman of Tata Steel, was chairperson of the Rhodes Scholarship for Oxford. So I traveled all the way from Mumbai to Jamshedpur. Sagrika traveled from Delhi. And I really, guess again wasn't good enough because I didn't get the scholarship and she did. But that's the first time we met. Then we were in Oxford around the same time, but she hung around with all the more academic types. I was all the time playing some sport or the other. And if I was not playing sport, I would be found in the university bar. So I would, I had a very different set of friends. And then when I came back, or I came back earlier, 88, 89, she came back in 91. We met again at the Times of India. And those were exciting times in the early 90s. Lots was happening. So I guess, it was love in the newsroom.
Very nice. Radeep, I was reading a theory which could be wrong, and you have to help me with that. And which scared the hell out of me actually. Which said that, often it is found that sons of very successful fathers end up to be mediocre. There's nothing to be genetic, there's nothing genetic to it, but they gave a logic. They gave a lot of examples that so and so's father was such a big man, and so you were in your childhood known as Mr. Dilip Sardesai's son. Well, the tables turn around after a while when Rajdeep Sardesai earned a name for himself, and then Mr. Dilip Sardesai was known as, he's Rajdeep Sardesai's father, right? So your father would have been a very happy, of course, he would have been a very happy and content man, but unfortunately we lost him in 2007, and 2008 you got your Padma Shri. So how did you feel when you got your Padma Shri? Didn't you feel that, of course, I mean, you would have felt the vacuum of your father not being there, but how was that feeling receiving the Padma Shri and making your family proud of yourself?
Again, I must be very honest, Ali. I've always believed that it was my father who really deserved all this recognition, the talents, because of the talent that he had, because of what he contributed. I mean, 1971, he had an enormous role to play in India's first ever victories in the West Indies and then in England. So ideally, he should be the one getting the Padma Shri. So in a way, I've accepted the award on his behalf. I've taken it as almost as an award that he deserved, which he didn't get, so I get it. Look, you know, and in hindsight, let me also say this very honestly. I really do believe journalists shouldn't be, be given or be taking state awards. So at that moment, perhaps I saw it as an honor, took it. Uh, Today, I might think differently. Let me also say, therefore, that yes, I do feel that it would have been nice if my father was around at that moment. But that's life. And I think I've always been, I've always counted on his blessings, especially in difficult times. So one generation to another, it's like a baton relay, Ali. You learn from the previous generation, their strengths, their mistakes, and you try and pass it on to the next generation. That's true of sport, that's true of life. I don't think my father would ever grudge anything I have got that he may not have had, and vice versa. And I think we just move on. And my son is a doctor, so and my daughter is a lawyer, so they have nothing to do with my profession. Again, I have been very clear, they must chart out their own path in life. I can be there to help guide them, but ultimately I don't believe in this dynastical syndrome. I don't believe that you are what you are because of your surname. Doesn't work for me. You are what you are because of the effort that you put in, the talents that you have, your abilities. And that's the way I believe people are able to discover their best, rather than being pushed into doing something. You become a film star because your parents are film stars, or you join the family business because it's the family business. It doesn't work for me. And that way journalism is good, because there's no family business here. There's nothing I inherited. My parents had never really seen a newsroom, much less a TV studio. So for them also, this was all very new. And I can tell you, they weren't very key. In '88, when I decided to join journalism, they said, look at it, you've got a great law degree. Why aren't you pursuing law? So they were initially reluctant, but eventually allowed me to fly. And I think that's the best lesson we can give the next generation. Just allow them to fly.
Absolutely. No, Ishan, your son, when he he said, I want to do medicine. So didn't he have any influence of the journalist's father over him, or wasn't he influenced by you, or he won't take up journalism for that matter?
No, I think I between my wife and me, we must have dissuaded him from doing that, and my daughter. I think we told them that, look, do anything you want, but don't do journalism. Look, I think that is where the pressure comes. That if your father is a journalist, or your father is has achieved some recognition in any field, then when you enter the same field, there can be pressure. And I just felt that it was his decision. He loved biology, loved medicine. It came really from within, and that's the way it should be. He has a passion for medicine. My daughter also, has discovered herself in law. And these are decisions that each individual must make. If they want to be journalists, I'm not going to stop them. But
Your
I
daughter
wasn't going to
definitely
act.
you had some influence over your daughter. In fact, she probably got inspired by you.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. She's fulfilling my unfulfilled dream. If you asked me to do it all over again, I'd probably have stayed on in the law, done the grind, the hard work through the courts, and eventually got somewhere in life. Uh, my
Come
daughter
on,
perhaps filled my daughter filled that gap. And I'm very proud of what she's on her own now in Mumbai, and doing commercial law, mergers, acquisitions, all kinds of things. So she's at the she's the corporate type, cutting edge. And I'm glad for her, again, discovering her own life. And she'll make her mistakes, she'll learn, and eventually just be a good person. At the end of the day, if you're a good citizen, I think that matters more than anything else.
right? Rajdeep, now, if supposing I am I want to clarify this doubt from you. It's given me a chance to learn, and I want to be a journalist, for example. Any person, our youngsters today, and there are different forms of journalism. Like Sagarika is a lot into print, basically, and we keep reading her columns. They're very interesting. You are on television. We keep seeing you, hearing you on television. Now, a person who wants to do journalism may not have a very good speech, diction, voice, clarity, might be camera conscious. So obviously, that person cannot be a good television presenter. But that person can be a good writer. But can it be trained? Can it be a trained quality where that person who is doing very good journalism in print switches over to television?
Ali, that's a very good question. The fact is that when we grew up, or I grew up in the 80s, there were no journalism schools. You just drifted into journalism from a sort of graduate degree that you had. Today's generation has all these options of going to journalism school, particularly in the digital media age. You want to learn about the technology, the editing, the scripting. A lot of that can be taught, I guess. But I've always believed that the best experience for journalism is actually being in a newsroom, is life itself. The more you go out, meet people, are curious, want to know more, listen to more people, you can be a good journalist. Yes, you're right that some people may have skills more suited to television, others may have skills more suited to print. I'll tell you, even today, I'll be very honest, my heart is in print. The column that I write once in 2 weeks, so when I'm writing stuff, whether it's a book or something else, gives me at times far greater satisfaction than a TV show. It's a case of Pehla Pyar. As I said in 85, it was that sort of, it was a newsroom in which a newspaper newsroom in which I discovered my love for journalism. And therefore, in a way, print remains Pehla Pyar for me. I would have loved to be an editor of a newspaper. It's one of my many unfulfilled dreams, I guess, in life. But look, every individual must find his or her own space. We must all play to our strengths. Some of us may be naturals in front of camera. Others may be camera shy. Some of us may be very good editors in terms of being able to package a story well. Some may be good producers. The best TV journalists are often the producers behind the camera. They are the ones who know how to package a show well. So I think we must all play to our strengths and, recognize that journalism, particularly TV, is the ultimate team effort. You're only as good as your camera person, your editor, your producer.
Right. Often we have also found that, one thing I must commend you and I must compliment you. I've seen you interview the biggest, the biggies, and I've seen you ask some very tough, difficult questions, but you've never been rude, or we've never seen you yell or scream or shout or lose your cool. Like, I will not name, but some anchors do that. And there's Ravan journalism. You get 10 people on the panel and you don't allow anyone to speak. Only one person is speaking throughout the entire show. You don't do that. So what is the secret behind you always maintaining your calm, composure, and cool on all your interviews, for that matter, Rajdeep?
My right-wing trollers on social media will listen to your question and they'll put out all those interviews where they'll say there are various people who berated you. Don't ask this. Don't interrupt me. There are things, I don't take you seriously. Not realizing that as an interviewer, my job is to ask the questions, right? I have no control over the answers. I would like to listen wherever possible. I try not to interrupt, but at times I do. And maybe that's a failing. But look, I've always believed that the focus must be on the interviewee. If you're interviewing Narendra Modi or interviewing Bal Thackeray or Mukesh Ambani or Pranab Mukherjee or Sonia Gandhi, I want to hear them. I don't want to hear the interviewer. What's happened, and maybe I'm part of that same syndrome in recent times, is the focus shifts to the interviewer, not to the interviewee. And that's where we lose the plot. The best interviewers in the world have a great ability to draw people out and bring out the best in them. And, at times things don't work out. At times they do. I've always believed that, every day is a new day. One of my early journalism gurus was R.K. Lakshman. He and I sat in the Times of India in cabins next to each other. And, I asked Lakshman, he did these pocket cartoons for more than 40, 45 years. I said, Mr. Lakshman, don't you ever get tired of drawing the common man? He said, I come into office thinking every day is the new day. This is the first cartoon I'm going to draw. And I think that's a great lesson for young journalists, that when you go out to do a story, you may do a great story, but you're only as good as your last story. There's always going to be something else, particularly in a country like India, something new, something different that you must attempt every day. And that's the spirit, I believe, with which one must go into journalism, that every day is a new day. No 2 days are the same. And, embrace the diversity of life and the challenges that a job like journalism poses by thinking anew and afresh every day. So maybe that's why I'm a little calm. I'm also calm, I think, because my life outside the newsroom is spent in reading, in watching a lot of old cricket matches or live sport. and in listening to Kishore Kumar, Mohammed Rafi. You know, Kishore Kumar for me is the ultimate. And when you listen to Kishore Kumar, you forget about everything else. It keeps you calm.
And when we listen to Rajdeep Sardesai, again, we forget about everything else. It keeps us calm as well. Rajdeep, talking about your trollers, how do you handle them? Do you just let it pass and ignore them? And because trolling is part of life, let's accept it. Everyone, you can have any ideology, any philosophy, you are bound to get, not only you, anyone gets trolled for something on the other, sometime on the other. So how do you handle them? How do you tackle it? Or just let it pass and just ignore them? It doesn't bother you.
I must be again very honest. Initially, it did bother me. I said, what have I done so wrong to attract such strong emotions? I'm trying to do a job to the best of my ability. I am not here to. I'm not here to win a popularity contest. I believe journalists are should not be into popularity contests. And yet, you get attacked from various sides. Then I realized, at times it's organized. At times people may have a different viewpoint. And they're happy to, I'm happy to have them disagree with me. Where it gets unfortunate is when it gets personal. If you start attacking someone personally, and often through the garb of anonymity, then it's an unequal battle. And I don't have a thick skin, so I do get affected. My children say that you should just ignore the trollers, and I do for the most part. At times it's amusing, but I think when it gets personal, that's when I think and defamatory, that's when I think they cross the line. But I'm okay now about it. It's always nice to be trending, I guess. What can I say? What
Very
can I
true.
say?
Very true. Very true. And before we let you go, I'd like to ask you one more thing. Nowadays anchoring has become a lot of performance. Like we just saw some videos which got viral. There was somebody from some channel who was reporting from Ukraine who was literally dancing. We saw somebody else. So we were like, it's actually makes us cringe. We're like, is this journalism? What's going wrong? And it is all a number game, perhaps. Whoever is going to garner more eyeballs, more TRPs. So what do you have to say about that without naming anyone? But the kind of people who yell and scream and shout, it doesn't work all the time. It doesn't work for people, responsible journalists. I haven't seen Karan Thapar ever shouting. I haven't seen Rajdeep Sardesai ever shouting. I haven't seen some most mature journalists ever shouting. So now the question here is, do you think a good actor can be a good anchor, or do you think a good anchor can be a good actor?
That's a great question, Ali. You're hitting something which troubles a lot of us who come, let's say, from the old school, who came into journalism before TV actually was even there in our lives. We came. My early bylines were by a staff reporter. We were not big stars or anything. We came into this profession because we loved the news, passionate about news. What's happened now is somewhere the news industry from information became infotainment. The whole notion of TRPs, that we've got to create some kind of drama to attract more TRPs, and particularly TV, which can be a very tabloid medium, is very susceptible to that you can create a sense of drama around a story. And that, I think, is where we lost the plot. Look, this was a terrific revolution when it started in the mid-1990s, private news TV with NDTV. And I owe a huge debt, to the likes of Pranav and Radhika Roy at NDTV. Before that, in Times of India, to the likes of Mr. Lakshman, Dilip Padgaonkar, Daryl De Monte. These were all fine people. These are fine people. And then, later in life, I've been privileged to work with some very fine people again. But the problem is the ecosystem has changed, where TRP seem to matter more than your passion for journalism or for a news story. You judge yourself not on how well you've done a story, but how, what's the rating of that particular show or particular interview you might have done. And once you do that, I think we are on a very slippery slope. And I don't know whether anybody's there to stop, to now say enough is enough and pull us back. Because once you're down a dark tunnel and you've lost even a rope to cling on to, you're just hurtling down. It's like a snake pit of cobras. So you might spread poison one day, someone else will do it. And it's competitive toxicity that's, destroying in a way the soul of journalism. Journalism was not meant to spread hate. It was not meant to sort of inflame passions in the way it is at the moment. And that is where I really draw the line. I actually don't care with some of the inanity of someone jumping and screaming in Ukraine. That's his or her problem. But when you do it in the context of, let's say, communalism, and when you run brazenly communal agendas, that's when I think we must draw the line. And I sometimes fear that we will create a communal riot in the TV studio. In fact, I'm told that one of the statements made in a recent TV program has led to a communal riot in Kanpur just a day ago. And while you're on live TV, I know that people will say something, it's not easy to edit out, but I think we need to exercise greater restraint and recognize that there is, TRPs must stand for television respect points, not for television rating points. And the day we recognize that there is why did we become journalists? We became journalists because we thought we could make a difference, maybe in our small way, try and make the world a better place, or at least inform people, make the world a more knowledgeable place. Knowledge is power. But we moved from knowledge to entertainment, and crass entertainment at times at that. And that, I think, is very, very dangerous for journalists in the future.
Absolutely, you're right. In fact, I'll share a small personal experience about close to 3 years back. There was my sister, Saira Shah Halim, had come down from Calcutta to a studio in Delhi, in Noida, in fact. And there was a physical fight in the studio, in the channel.
Sure.
And the police had to be called. So it was like, really, we all are very concerned. Sarah, you all right? We were seeing it all live on television. So what you are saying is this could happen. There could be a possibility. I hope that doesn't happen. Fingers crossed. Lastly, Rajdeep, I know you're busy. You got to go, but I would like to ask you one small thing. You have traveled around the world, and they say the best education is traveling. You have met the most interesting people. You've interviewed the people across the globe. You've interviewed my father. You've interviewed my uncle. You've interviewed a whole lot of people. And now today, I have the privilege of interviewing Rajdeep Sardesai. So Rajdeep, how does it feel being on the other side?
in the times in which we live, and you've been very kind in this interview, in the times in which we live, it's perhaps easier to be an interviewee than an interviewer, because on social media, as an interviewer, any mistake that you make is immediately picked on and made into a big story, which makes the task of interviewing very difficult. And the interviewee can decide when he or she wants to answer a question, when he or she wants to dodge a question. I look at the number of public figures in India today who don't even do interviews. Whether it's Prime Minister Modi, whether it's Congress leader Sonia Gandhi, whether it's many of our chief ministers, Naveen Patnaik. When was the last time Naveen Patnaik was aggressively quizzed in an interview? When was the last time even an Uddhav Thackeray doesn't give interviews so readily anymore? So I think unfortunately public figures are not making themselves available to scrutiny. So maybe they also feel that they'll be hounded if they sort of give an interview. I can see where some of them are coming from. But, honestly, it's easier being an interviewee in the times in which we live. Because as an interviewer, I find anything I say, immediately someone picks up 30 seconds and edits it out nicely and will put it out. And next thing I know, I'm being trolled. So, no, I'm just happy to just answer your question. I have nothing to hide. I always believe that, I didn't tell you what questions to ask, not ask. Please feel free. That's the spirit with which I hope our public figures will also see their responsibility. Not tell me in advance, I will only answer these questions, not those. That takes away from public life. So I hope that I see it on BBC. I see, their top politicians being grilled almost every night. And I hope that spirit will return to India.
I must tell this to you, since you are a senior journalist, I was watching an interview where a journalist was asking someone a question. The interview had that questions marked, prepared. Like, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. What I do is I study about that person thoroughly. I make sure I've done my research. And then I don't form my questions. The questions arise from the conversation. So that journalist had come with questions prepared. So question number 1, answer. Question number 2, answer. Question number 3, अरे मैं तो अभी जवाब दिया है ना आपको क्वेश्चन नंबर 3 का जो पहले अगर आप सुन रहे होंगे. So some of them are not attentive, but you are always attentive, spontaneous, and you react to it. But Rajdeep Sardesai, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for taking your time and this wonderful candidate chat. I really loved every moment in being conversation with you, Rajdeep.
Major Mohammed Ali Shah, you come from an extremely illustrious family, and therefore it's been a privilege talking to you. And as I said, may more power to you, and may you continue to share your thoughts, analysis on television programs, and continue to impart knowledge. Nothing better than that.
Thank you, Rajdeep. Means a lot. Thank you very much. Grateful to you.
Namaskar.
Cheers.
Jai Hind.
Ending the broadcast.